Hey Girl Talk community, it's your host Charlene. Today we have in studio Nina Bosky. She's the owner of Life Bites Global. Nina is a life, business, and media coach. She's also a producer and has her own podcast. Nina today will share with us her 3 new projects that she has going on simultaneously, and that's around the life of Marilyn Monroe. She will also be here to motivate us to keep moving forward with our businesses. Well, hello, Coach Nina.
Hello.
Welcome to Girl Talk.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. I am so excited about having you here because you're going to talk about all the things that will encourage us going forward.
Yes.
Now, we're in the month of
March.
And so, by now, a lot of people's enthusiasm for all of the goals they had at the beginning of the year, they're starting to wane, right?
Yes.
Because reality sets in of maybe the difficulty or of some of the challenges or setbacks
Yes.
that they may have experienced because, when you set a goal, let's say to become an entrepreneur, though that's a tough goal when you're first getting started.
Yes.
So we
Because
need
you have to
some,
carry it all.
Exactly. So we need some help with keeping the momentum going. So when you agreed to do the
energy.
show, yes, I was so excited that you had the time, the moment,
Uh-huh.
to come in and give us some advice about how to keep the momentum going.
How to keep it going.
Yes.
Well, there's a statistic that talks about that about the second week of January.
Okay.
Only 8% of people have actually are fulfilling their goals or their New Year's
Wow.
resolutions. So the reality is that by March, most of us have said, what? New Year's goals, right?
Right.
And the key here is that I like to talk about energy
Okay.
versus just goals. So how do I want to approach the year so that if I get off track, then I can put myself back on track relatively easy. But if I
Yes.
have a long list of goals, that becomes very challenging because we're already taxed just by the nature of the society we live in today. It's very
Exactly.
different than what it was before. So I think the key here is set an energy intention. So for example, some people say, you know what, this is my year of growth.
Yes.
So if whatever growth means to me, if I'm getting back, if I'm off track and I need to get back on center, right?
Yes.
I'm going to look at myself and say, okay, how can I grow more?
Yes.
If I'm about transformation and I'm just sitting on the couch all day, that's telling me something to get back on track.
Yes.
Compared to looking at a long list of goals and going, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get there.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. So you have to be tenacious.
You have to be very tenacious, yes, especially when starting a business.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're carrying everything. Unlike when you work for a corporation, you might go to a different, go to the IT department for your computer issues. You might go to the marketing department for your marketing
Yes.
issues. But if you're starting your own business, you're doing all of it.
You're everyone. Yes. And I yell out for different departments that haven't taken on their responsibility so that I can call them into existence.
Yes,
So
yes.
that I'm not carrying all the weight,
Well, and also in our mind, it looks so different than the
Yes.
reality. It's much more glamorous to say, I own my own business, etc., versus I literally have to carry everything, and it's not so glamorous. You might be the janitor and the CEO
That's
all in one
right.
day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, why do you say you have to be tenacious as a businesswoman when you're starting an adventure or a project in your business?
Well, I think tenacity, if you don't have tenacity,
Uh-huh.
it's going to be really hard to hold it up
Yes.
when the going gets tough.
Absolutely.
And in every new business, the going's going to get tough,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
so the key here is if you know that going in and you know you have to be tenacious versus, oh, I tried it one time and it didn't work because I fell down. Well, guess what? You're going to fall down a lot when you're starting your new business.
That's true, because you cannot possibly know everything.
No.
Especially when things just pop up.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have to take care of them. And like you said, when you're carrying the whole ball, it's different because you can get taken off in a direction that you didn't expect.
Yes, yes. So tenacity in life is important, and sometimes it's hard when you don't have the outside world telling you how wonderful you are, how
Yeah.
great it is, and then where are you going to find that? That's when the inside is probably more important than what's going on in the outside.
Absolutely, because it's the inside that falls apart first.
Yes.
So you have this
Yes.
smile, but inside everything is like falling apart.
Yes.
So now, being tenacious
Yes.
as an entrepreneur and keeping moving forward, even when things hit hard, like what in the world do you do?
Well, I have a really good friend and colleague. His name is Tim Story, and he's a fellow coach, and he's been in the business for years, and he has a wonderful best-selling book, and it's called, his quote is, basically, after every setback,
Yes.
there's a comeback.
There's a comeback,
right?
yes.
And he's all about, his book is come back and beyond, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the key here is everybody, if you've lived a little, you're going to have a setback. Just
Absolutely.
know that that's going to happen, right? And if you know that going in, then you're not going to be so set on perfection.
Right.
It's going to be more of, hey, this is just part of it. But one of the things I would say to anybody that has a setback, and I certainly have in my career multiple times, so it's not just one or two times, it's multiple times, because I have a lot of big projects, right?
Yes,
The bigger
you
the
do.
project, sometimes the bigger
bigger
the
the
setback.
setback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the key, is if sometimes you might have to regroup. You might be depleted.
Yes.
So put it on the shelf for a while and go find your happy place until you can recharge, regroup, and then come back to it. So look at it. You might have to just step away for a while, but then come back and start asking yourself some questions. What happened? Why did it fail?
Yes.
Why did it, did you fall down? And if you learn from it, oh my gosh, that's the best thing that anybody can do, is because if I'm learning and growing and I'm coming up and coming out as my best self,
Yes.
oh my gosh, that's it doesn't matter whether I have a setback or a comeback or I win or I lose. The reality is I'm doing the best I can.
I like that. I really like that, because I think we're too focused and concentrated on winning and losing. And so when we see something as a loss, we tend to retreat and just go somewhere and mend that instead of looking at the full picture of what happened, and doing like you said, that makes more sense.
Well, and I also think that getting much more comfortable with what we call failure.
Yes.
And also the fact that is there, what is it, the president of Spanx, her brother and her would have Sunday night dinners with their father. Their father would ask them on a weekly basis, how many times did you fail this
Yes,
week?
yes.
And so we tend to shy away from conflict. And you think about what makes a good movie, it's conflict.
conflict,
It brings it forward. So using conflict as a way to help you grow is a really good thing. Same thing when you fall down. Utilize it. Don't shy away from it and say, "Oh my gosh, and start beating yourself up with all that negative self-talk,"
Yes,
right?
that self-talk.
So I think it's really important to start getting comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with the fact that you're going to have both.
Yes, I agree. That's perfect answer. Now you are the queen. The queen
Of something.
of
What am I?
the queen of starting multiple businesses.
Yes, that I
Right?
am.
Yes.
Or at
And
least
so-
projects.
Projects,
Yes.
definitely. So what is the newest project that you're working on right now?
I'm so excited to be here and talk about it because you're one of the first people we're actually talking about it out in the world.
Yay.
And it's really fun. It's a podcast. It's actually a 3-part project I've been working on for 7 years. So there's a feature film called Goodnight Maryland. There was 3 seasons of a radio show called Goodnight Maryland Radio. From that birthed a documentary
Wow.
around, and the whole Goodnight Maryland and the documentary and the radio show had to deal with Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
So the feature film is a thriller noir, and it's not a biopic. So it blends fact and fiction, and she's in it, but she's not the main star, but she's the driving force behind it, and it's very similar to, let's say, a Chinatown or L.A. Confidential. So it's
that's
really
gonna be great.
yeah. So it's very much, and I love the theme, because in my old life, right, I used to market movies, and so one of the things that I would do is create the emotional connection with the audience. So this movie theme talks about dreams coming true and dreams being shattered. So whether you're Marilyn
Wow.
Monroe or these main characters in this movie, it really asks you the question, how far would you go to have your dream come true?
I love
how
that.
much are you willing to have that dream come true? The documentary deals with the investigation of her death, and really talking about the debunking a lot of the theories that most people think are true, including
Right.
me when I first started. So a lot of it is really taking those rumors that are so ingrained in society about
Yes.
who she was. And then the new podcast, which is really why I'm here, and not why I'm here, but one of the reasons why I'm talking about this, is that the podcast is a global podcast, and she's got close to 15 million Facebook fans. So here we are,
Wow.
57 plus years later,
Yes.
and we're still talking about Marilyn Monroe. And whether you're 6 or 96, everybody knows who she is.
Everyone knows who she is.
But this is going to be very different. Instead of me talking to you about Marilyn Monroe, it's an acting podcast. And our actress, Erin Gavin, first of all, she's a wonderful actress, but sometimes you can just listen to the podcast and you'll think you're listening to Marilyn Monroe. She's that
Wow.
good.
Wow.
Yeah, she's that good. And so it humanizes her, and we'll really be touching on a lot of her life that most people, including myself before I got to know who she was, really will see her in a different light.
Now, what is the biggest misconception about Marilyn?
That she was stupid.
Yes, 'cause we talked
yeah,
about that.
Ditzy, right?
Right.
You know, no, I mean, that was a persona. She was a very bright individual. Her IQ was close to about 160.
Wow.
She wasn't very well read in terms of schooling, but she was very well read.
Okay.
And she was extremely bright. If you think about it, most people thought that was her, and yet that was a persona that she
Exactly.
created, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
That part of it that we discussed, for me, is the part that's the most intriguing. How you can calculatingly understand what is expected of you and use that to your advantage
Yes.
to actually do what you want to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And to get rid of the ego that goes along with saying, I am probably the smartest person in this room, but I'm going to allow you to think what I look like versus who I am so that I can get to my goal.
Get to your goal. And,
Yes.
and I also think that on a challenging point, it fragmented her
Yes.
mentally. So she had it going for her in the beginning because it got her
Right.
to where she needed to be. But then what happened is that she really wasn't being who she really was, and so that's
Yes.
that's the big challenge that you have. But I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. The other one is that she slept her way to the top. She did not sleep her way to the top. She was actually one of the hardest working actors and actresses. She could sing, she could dance. She spent hours and hours and hours perfecting her craft, and I actually just thought she was kind of a little ditzy, actress, and it's far from the truth.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's
you wouldn't think
amazing.
that, right?
No. So now, what is your vision for what you want to accomplish? What are you trying to accomplish by doing this?
This project. In the beginning, I spent a lot of years in entertainment. So when I got involved with the feature film, I was like, okay, this is entertainment again, because it's a
Right.
thriller noir. So I'm like, okay, why am I here, kind of thing.
Right.
But a lot of my purpose today is that it has to make sense. It has to have a give back
Okay.
portion of it. So if you take Marilyn's life, it's a huge tragedy at 36 years old to leave this earth
Yes.
and not really be all of who you could have been, right?
Yes.
But if we can learn from her life, taking a tragedy and turning it into a transformation, and in this case, taking her legacy and learning lessons from it. She was extremely fragmented as a child. Her mother didn't want her before she was born. She wanted to have an abortion. She was adamant
So
about
the
it.
rejection.
Huge rejection before she
Wow.
was even born. Her father never wanted to know her, and actually when she went and found him years later, actually basically said, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I have my new life, my own kids and marriage, and I don't want to
Wow.
acknowledge you as my child. And then her mother was institutionalized. And so when you look at that kind of fragmentation, and she was going from house to house, orphanage and foster home to foster home, and I think almost every year of her childhood, she was in a different school in a different location. So when you look, and she was physically and sexually abused. So when you look at where she came from and how far she came, you go, wow, right? So what am I doing with not only the documentary but the podcast?
Yes.
We're actually, the podcast is based on Gary Vitacco-Robles' book, volume 1 and 2. And believe me, it's an encyclopedia. You can say, Gary, what was Marilyn doing on 2 o'clock the day she died,
Yes.
right? And he'll tell
He'll
you,
be able to
right?
tell you.
He'll tell you. But one of the things that he also is a mental health professional. So he's going to shed light on mental illness and addiction and the correlation between the two, because a lot of times you'll hear about mental illness in the
Yes,
public,
yes.
and then you'll learn about addiction.
Yes.
But there's such a high correlation between our homeless rate, between people really getting the help they need versus going to the suppression that'll make the feelings go away, at least temporarily, right?
Yes.
Which is the alcohol or drugs, which is what Marilyn actually ended up doing as well.
Wow. You know, it's so much when you unpack her life that people can identify with that you may not realize, from homeless population, young kids who are part of the foster care system, and their ability or inability to get past that,
Yeah.
you know, and the lack of support that's there, the rejection, all of that, and to be able to see someone who may not have lived what we would say is a long life, but have such an impact on society and people, you know, is really an attribute to
Yeah.
who she was, you know. So when you unpack
Yeah.
it in such an entertaining way, I think that'll give people another look to say, wait a minute, she's just like me.
Yes.
Wait a minute, she was just like me. Like you know, like people who have mental health issues can say, wait a minute, she's just like me. And look how
Exactly.
successful
Yes.
she became, right? And
Yeah.
learn from the tragedy of her succumbing to the things that did take her out in the end.
And back in 1962, it's very different than today.
Absolutely.
Although it's an epidemic today, which is kind of interesting because we have all this help and all these tools. Back in 1962, they were just, overdosing the
Yes.
stars with all these pills. So they'd give them pills in the morning to get them up, and then pills in the evening to bring them down.
Yes.
And she was really actually at the time on medication that wasn't right for her diagnosis. But it was back in 1962.
Right.
But today, the doctors would be actually liable, very similar to Michael Jackson. And because
Yes.
part of how she passed away was the chlorohydrate. So it was the combination of the two drugs,
drugs.
that actually caused her death, similar to Michael Jackson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, when we were we talked a couple of times last week, and then when you sent over some information to me, and I was telling you, I was like, you are such a coach by nature that we came on to talk about your new projects,
Yes.
which you are the queen of projects, and making them successful.
Yes.
You know, you also were very concerned and wanted to make sure that our listeners were encouraged so that they could move forward with their projects and the things they're doing, and then being entrepreneurs. And so in that way, I was looking at, your questions, that we had discussed, and I said, she's such a coach at the core of also wanting to be helpful to others who may try to do something and not feel like they're being able to be successful at it.
Yeah, and I think that's the key here with you take Marilyn's life and what are some teachable moments. One of the things that she did, and she did well, is back in the day when it was Leave It to Beaver and all these very idealistic type of
Yes.
shows,
Yes.
she was actually talking about sexual abuse. She was talking about her mental health history in terms of her family legacy.
Yes.
So she was talking about things back in the day that most people never talked about.
That's right.
So I think one of her popularity and what makes her popular today is that sense of vulnerability and being able to be so relatable, and people can
Yes.
relate to her. And so I think that if you can use her life and her legacy to transform instead of staying in the tragedy. And so for those of you that are watching, I would say if there's a setback or if there's a tragedy, how can you learn from it?
Yes. Now, she also was a very smart businesswoman.
Yes.
And she had her own production company back when women didn't have production companies.
No.
So could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So Mary Pickford was one of the first women, and it was surrounded by men, United Artists, back in the late 1920s. And then there was also Lucille Ball, and she had her husband. And then Marilyn Monroe started her own production company, late 50s, with a gentleman named Milton Green, who was also a famous photographer as well. And they produced The Prince and the Showgirl. And so that was one of the things that one of her production companies, and she was very acute at what she wanted and how she wanted it.
Okay.
So she was very strategic. So as a business owner, you have to be strategic too.
That's
You
right.
can't just go. You can't just move, right? So that's one of the things that people also don't know about her, of how actually what a cute business mind she actually did have.
That's amazing. Now, how do we use time management? Because you send me all kinds of like little
The story of my
videos
life.
and stuff like that to say, Charlene, okay, we have to practice time management if you're going to be successful at this, and like everyone, if we're going to be successful at managing more than one thing in our lives, we have to be good at time management. So you brought that up as something to discuss too. So how do we, you have these 3 amazing projects that you're working on all at the same time. How do you manage your time?
You have to be good at saying no.
Okay.
And I also think it's more it's more of an expansive concept. Instead of just time management,
Yes.
it's energy management.
Okay.
So if I'm not putting in, some days I'll be the first. Somebody said to me, I think you have to listen to your own advice, which is one of my famous quotes. You got, in order to speed up, you got to slow down,
Slow down,
right?
yes.
And I thought, that's very true. I got to slow down. But the slow down is more about, if you think about a high peak performance athlete.
Yes.
They aren't on high peak performance. Even if you look at any athlete, they might work out for a couple hours, they rest for a couple hours.
Yes.
They work out for a couple hours, they rest for a couple hours. Well, what we do is we just go, 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 go.
Right.
And we're like just little treadmills, or like, we're on a treadmill and we're
Yes.
running and we don't stop and ask ourselves, is this really what I should be doing? Because if you're scattered and you don't know what your priority is, and I say
Yes.
priority, not priorities, your
Yeah.
priority for that moment, somebody calls you, you all of a sudden you're looking at your emails, and all of a sudden you're Googling where you should be going on vacation, right?
Yes.
Instead of really looking at, what do I want to get out of the day? What do I want to get out of the week? And then being
Yes.
able to strategize how
That's
I'm going to
right.
do it. But if you just get up on a Monday morning, you look at your calendar and go, then I'm at the mercy of the outside world
Yes.
and where it carries me. But if I start with an energetic intention of the day, not just my list of things that I want to do, but what do I want to get out of the day? Do I want to lead with love? Do I want this day to be about love?
Yes.
Do I want it to be about power, clarity, and focus because I have a strong meeting that day? If I'm with my family, do I want it to be about love and laughter and connection? And if I lead with that, most likely I'm going to get that, because you're co-creating. But if I just go into it and you're in a bad day and you're in a bad day and you're in a bad day and you're in a bad day,
You
all of a
cannot
sudden
track
I'm
that,
going to
and
be
now you-
having a bad day.
Yes, yes. Instead of being at the forefront of not only you having a good day, but bringing that energy that's going to create an atmosphere where everyone has to, their vibration has to come up to
Exactly.
meet yours versus yours going down to
And
meet theirs.
Exactly. And if you
Yeah.
stay in that vibration energetically, you're more apt to just keep creating it.
Yes.
So that abundance doesn't come from what I have on the outside world. It's how I'm feeling, and how can I get to that feeling in that moment.
Yes.
And if I get this project done, which I have been in my life, it's like I'm the mercy of a project. When this project happens, I'm going to be happy. When I get this wonderful new love in my life, I'm going to be happy.
Right.
But here's the thing, that moment is going to go away, and then you're going to look for the nice next shiny thing, girl talk, right, to make me happy.
Yes.
But here's the thing, girl talk is part of your happiness,
Right,
but
but
it
it's
can't
not.
be the reason for your happiness, Charlene.
Exactly. And I think that's something that not just women, but I think everyone does that. They attach an emotion to an end goal.
Yes.
When in reality, you should be that every day, because when you get to that end goal and it's a moment of bliss because
Yes.
you've reached it, then what?
Then what?
Then what? So you
Then
should
what?
be happy and blissful and creative and powerful throughout the process.
But here's the thing, in fairness of that, as people, we're going on the camera, we're watching the television,
Right.
we're going and watching the media, we're around a lot of people that haven't become more conscious and aware of that concept.
Yes.
And so if you're not protecting your own energy field, then what happens is then I start vibrating on that frequency of energy, and so it becomes much more challenging because you're almost going upstream.
Right.
It's different. That's why everybody can be peaceful if you're a monk on the top of a hill and you're not around anybody, right? But when you are and you have
Right.
all this stuff coming at you,
Yeah.
you know, there's this a statistic back in the mid 2000s. The ex-CEO of Google said that we actually, in a 48-hour period, process as much information in a 48-hour period as we did from the dawn of civilization to 2003.
And we wonder why
Okay.
we're so tired.
So we're so tired. So you have all this information. In 2017, the statistic goes to about 34 gigabytes of information we're processing in a 24-hour period. So I sit there and go, well, what is 34 gigabytes?
Right.
So if we were a laptop, we would crash within a week. Okay?
Wow.
So that's 24 hours of images and everything coming at us. So guess what, guys? If you are not managing your energy,
Yes.
most likely you will be too stressed out. You won't achieve the high level of success that you're looking to do. So slow it down, be strategic, take time out, because less sometimes is more.
I agree 100%. But it took me a moment to get there.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that people need to be kind to themselves and understand that, you know, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and master this. It's over time. Right?
It is, but I think that more today than ever, back, you know, it used to be a midlife crisis. You'd hit 40 or 45 and then you would change courses and you'd be like, freak out, oh my God, I'm burning out, I don't know if I can do this.
Right.
Well, now it's happening at a faster rate.
That's
So
very
you've got
true.
27, 28-year-olds. I know that I'm coaching in, I say Silicon Valley reminds me of the Wall Street of the West Coast,
Absolutely.
right? You got two phones and you're not sleeping and you're working at 10 o'clock at night and you get up and you do the same thing again and again
Yes.
and again. It's the people that know how to manage and slow down and be, I call them self-strategy sessions. Take time out, put it in your schedule that you are going to take time out, plan out your week, be thoughtful about your work-life balance. Balance is kind of a myth because you're always going to be, if you put too much time in your family, then your work life is going to
Yes.
suffer. If you put too much time in your work life, your family and personal life is going to suffer. But if you're more strategic about it, when somebody says, hey, can you help me? You might say, I would love to, but not now.
Not now. Yes. And being good with that, being
Yeah.
comfortable with that, right?
The power of no.
The power.
Sherry Salata, which is Oprah's ex-CEO, wrote a beautiful book called The Beautiful No.
Yes.
And sometimes those no's when you're saying no, but sometimes when you even get the rejection of a no, it's the universe's way of saying not now, or you need to shift directions. And pay attention to that, because the universe might be saying, you might be so focused on, I've got to have this cup. And this is just a little cup, but maybe the universe wants to give you a big picture,
Right.
so you don't know that,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
So we need to slow down so
Yeah.
that we can speed up.
Slow down to speed up.
Now, you talk about, you sent me a video, and the video was about
Which
what
video
are
did I
our
send you?
wins. You send me a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of videos, but this one in particular, because we could be here for 5 hours. Just, I love your energy and I love talking to you.
I love
So-
you too, girl.
So we're just trying to condense it, right?
Yeah.
But this one was about what are our wins? How do we qualify so that we quantify so that we know that we are moving forward? How do we count our wins?
Well, I like to count small wins because it's those little small wins that get you to the big win.
Exactly.
And so if you're just going for the big win and you're not going for the small wins, then you're going to probably get very discouraged if you have a big goal, right?
Yes.
So I say, really quantify. Did you show up as your best self? And so I usually ask people, who do they admire?
Yes.
Okay. Some people, if they're a female, they might say Oprah Winfrey, or somebody in some high-powered suit if it's a business. Some people with the passing of Kobe Bryant earlier in the year might say Kobe Bryant, right?
Yes.
If you even take his mentality, the Mamba mentality, but he would talk about success and failure. He wouldn't go into a game saying, oh my gosh, success or failure. He would go into it as the best version of himself.
Right.
So if you can answer that, hell yes.
Yes.
Hell yes. I showed up as my best self.
Yes.
You know it energetically.
Yeah.
And when I ask people that question, if they're kind of hesitating, they're kind of going, oh, well, maybe, right? No. If you want to start your own business, you've got to be passionate. You've got to step up, and you've got to do it, and you've got to have that ignition that really is going to put you on fire. And if you don't have it, you got to find a way to get it.
Exactly. Now, what are 3 pieces of advice you're going to give someone who, now we've got them hyped up, right? We've got them hyped right there all the way up here now. So to keep going.
Okay.
What are 3 pieces of advice?
There's 3 things that I like to give people. And the first one is you've got to have a vision of what it is you want, and you've got to be clear about that vision. Because if it's in conflict and not in alignment with who you are, that vision, just getting off the ground, is going to be hard. So if you say, I want to start my own business, but you have financial issues, you've got children, etc., and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't quit my day job, then you've got to find a way to create your big vision, but be specific with your next step. So vision is number 1. Number 2 is you got to have a passion.
Yes.
People got to feel it. If you're like, oh, well, I got to talk to you about, Coach Nina, well, I don't know. I don't know what you should do today, right? I mean, nobody's going to listen to me, right? So where's my passion? When you hear me talk about my projects, you hear passion, and part of it is that for me, my passion is really about transforming lives, my own life and those of others. So 2 is passion. But here's the third one. If you don't have this, it doesn't matter how passionate you are, you got to get into action. So what 3 things are you going to do today, even if it's one thing, to bring your vision forward and to keep going? Don't look for perfection.
Absolutely. Don't look for perfection.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It'll stop you.
No. It'll definitely stop you.
Wow.
And the thing is you'll keep waiting for that perfect moment.
Yes.
And there is no perfect moment. For the first season of the podcast, we had a mandate that we had to get this out at the end of March. And so instead of going through a normal pre-production time where you're casting, we were casting pre-production, production at the same time, right?
Wow.
So if I were one of those people that waited for it to be perfect, I probably wouldn't be having this opportunity right now.
That's very true.
So sometimes you've got to, fly and move all at the same time.
At the same time.
You just gotta go with it.
Yes.
And it'll work itself out. Because some of the things you think about in your own head that keep you from doing are just little excuses that keep you sabotaging your success and not going for it. That's why with Girl Talk, look about it. It was a vision for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like it started moving, and you start putting one foot in front of the other, and all of a sudden it starts expanding and growing and growing. So I'd say just get going.
Just get going.
Get going. Yeah, move it.
I love that. So now you have these 3 projects that have all are coming to fruition, right?
Yes.
And so we want to know, when is that happening? How do we contact you? How do we stay, abreast of everything that's going on?
Okay, so the first one is Marilyn Behind the Icon, and that would be the first one that everybody, if you're on Facebook, it's Facebook/Behind the Icon. So that's actually the URL for it, and that's probably a great way for them to get in touch.
Yes.
MarilynBehindTheIcon.com is our website, so definitely go to our website as well. Apple. We're all over the place, but the best place, if you go to your Apple Podcasts, search Marilyn Behind the Icon, it's going to come up. You'll get 10 new episodes of the acting podcast.
Wow.
You'll have 3 past interviews that I've done, and then you'll get a chance to really get to learn about the star and also your own life, because there'll be some things in there for people to really help them with they are suffering from either a mental health issue, right? Or maybe they're having a hard time with their own vision. Marilyn was the ultimate visionary, if you think about it, right? She had to vision a new future for herself, and then they'll be able to get some help with if they're suffering from addiction as well. So.
Wow. Well, Coach Nina Bosky, I am so happy you came to visit Girl Talk.
I am
We've
too.
learned so much in this short time. I appreciate you. You know how much I love you.
I love you too. It's so much fun.
And thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. And thank you. Bye.
Yeah. So, Girl Talk community, this has been an amazing podcast. This is one you're going to want to listen to, go back, listen to again. We have Coach Nina Bosky here with us. And so we just want to encourage you and make this a part of who you are as an entrepreneur. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the subscribe button below.